Hi, this is William Ramsey. Welcome to William Ramsey Investigates. On tonight's show, I have a very special guest, a returning guest. His name is Michael Basham, and we've kind of set some time aside to read a fantastic book by G.K. Chesterton titled The Everlasting Man. And it's very dense, his references are incredible, understanding of comparative religions. And, his name came to my attention from my research into Aleister Crowley, and I remember Mike talking about it often, so I was definitely intrigued about the book and wanted to read it. And Mike is the proprietor of SpiritWars, which can be found on the Fringe Radio Network with John McMahon, and he does a great show, a lot of interviews, but we're going to talk about that, also maybe some current events after we discuss the book. But Mike, are you there?
Yes, sir. Standing by.
Awesome. Well, thanks.
Gold leader standing by.
Right on. So I really enjoy, I got to get my notes up. Again, it's just another great book. The way that he broke down The Everlasting Man, G.K. Chesterton, was to break it into two parts. He wanted to talk about the kind of strange personage of human beings, and then kind of juxtapose it with this other unique individual that we call Christ. So the intro, he kind of really starts out in the first part talking about man in a cave paintings, and what we know about history, but also what people assume about written history. But I think he makes a very good point that man, and it's kind of a biblical point as well, which man is very different from the animal kingdom and engaged in unique actions of action, imagination, and art that I think are unique. And I think that he lays this groundwork to talk about the divinity and uniqueness of Christ in the second part of the book. And it's interesting too when I was reading this, because I just read a book about George Orwell's 1984. It's called The Biography of 1984, and he referenced H.G. Wells, and G.K. Chesterton also is influenced or referencing H.G. Wells's evolutionary tract about the history of mankind. And he's critiquing, Chesterton is critiquing H.G. Wells in the intro and at the very end of the book. And I found that to be interesting because of H.G. Wells's, I think it is the general view of this evolutionary view where history itself doesn't have as much meaning. And I think that Chesterton talks about the advent of Christ with really great meaning for humanity, but also evidences Christ as like this great change into the world. And anyway, what are your thoughts, Mike? Maybe, that was kind of a long intro, but when you read this, I know you read it in the past. What was it like reading it again in the present?
Well, I've been meditating and rereading sections of the book, and just to try to digest it down, which you just did so very well. I've decided, and I did a little late night kind of ramble and preview to today to kind of get warmed up, and I realized that the way to read Chesterton, one of the best ways, especially in this day and age, is just to read the end of each chapter, because he kind of finally sums together all of his points. And as you said, the first half, he's kind of tackling Darwinism and a lot of philosophies, and then he gets into all the world history, very similar to, what was his name, who wrote Tragedy and Hope, Bill Clinton's mentor. Sounds like a female.
I know what you're talking about.
Anyway, it's almost like a Christian version of that, like just a expansive look, yes, just running through the entire history of the known world.
Yes. And
your mind is just like, it's almost like you're just seeing the earth from far away, and you're looking at what is man, and it's amazing to see how different, just when you start looking at what a human actually is compared to what the Darwinists are just always trying to show you, just gradually we've evolved from the amoebic whatever. And that's even more fantastic of a nightmare. But he really expertly just kills evolution to start out. And then it shows you the history of the known world. And he even hints, as we spoke last time, there was history before even the ancient Babylonians and the Egyptians
Right.
gave you the sense that the earth was already really, really old, and that there were almost long forgotten other things that happened, which is so fascinating to me. To kind of boil it down, though, I really, I think it, especially to pick your mind with your expertise regarding the dark side that you have studied as far, your show is amazing, by the way. The interviews that you're doing, the investigative work that you're doing, it's so key and crucial to today. But with regards to, all of the Aleister Crowley inspired garbage and filth that we live in today, and the culminating transhumanism and all the, we're going to ascend and be like God and live forever. All of that connected. I mean, if we were able to channel Chesterton's mind to look at AI and look at what they're doing now, it's very, it would be good. I'm sure we can if we keep reading Chesterton. I recommend everybody listening to, we're hoping to get you into reading Chesterton,
I think that reading is really it, because you have to kind of read it very carefully and take your time, and it's definitely worth another at least for me, another reread, so but it's like the same thing happened. What was the earlier book that we talked about him? Was
Heretics or Orthodoxy?
Yeah, Orthodoxy.
Or both.
Orthodoxy was the same thing. Like, he starts off with, you don't really know where he's going, and then you figure it out that he's laying this groundwork that he wants to, expand upon at the end. I felt like that was the similar thing between this and Orthodoxy. And but I think it's the same thing I felt about Orthodoxy. Very contemporary issues. Still talking about evolution. Still talking about comparative religion. It brings in everything from all over the globe. Confucian, Muhammad, all the old Jewish traditions, Moses. So he's really, riffing, I think, really effectively and brilliantly on these different ideas that people have and the presumptions about Christianity that he disabuses, So I think that still, it's just another timely book. I mean, I need to read it again, but
well, again, it's easy to almost just maybe breeze through each chapter and look at, for instance, the last half of the book. It ends with just a look at the church and how the church, and I love this little quote, really burned into my mind the other day. I was reading it, and it says that the church has actually died over and over again since Christ came, and he died and rose again. And this amazing fact of the gospel, which he looks at against the heathen backdrop, which is so cool. Because, instead of being like, well, we all know about Christ, and it's like, no, you're a pagan guy pretending to be pagan. You're just coming and looking at this man and what he said and what happened. And then consequently, after that is thousands of years, 2,000 years of history, and the church settles and dies, and then it's like rebirthed. And it's because the God of Christianity knows his way out of the grave. I mean, we have that God, and other religions not so much. You don't see this incredible passionate return to, all the New Age Buddhism and Islam. They're around, but you just look at this, and what he calls it is there's this madness in the world, but among all that madness, there's this incredible joy and love and just the fruit of the Spirit of the Christians, and just this ecstatic happiness. Like, when you ever meet a Christian that really is in tune with God and loves the Spirit, it's just amazing. Yeah. Before we go further, William, did you hit record? I just want to double check, because I can't record from my end. So
I have been recording. So
you're recording. Okay,
I'll make sure that this happens. So let me change this. I think that I can manage it. Allow record. Try it now.
Okay, yeah. All right. Just as
I think I had to hit some button. I will make sure that this records. No, but that's an excellent point. So I think that he finishes up really strong with all of these different elements, the witnesses, how interesting this event and how unique Christ was in comparison to all these people. I really like when he was talking about the Magi as representatives of this old mystical order, this old,
Yeah.
I thought that was, I remember, that was really one of my favorite parts where I was really getting into it. But I think he says, here's the important point, that the Magi, who stand for mysticism and philosophy, are truly conceived as seeking something new, and even as finding something unexpected. That tense sense of crisis, which still tingles in the Christmas story and in every Christmas celebration, accentuates the idea of a search and discovery. So, I mean, they're talking about that. I think that was really fascinating. And also how he likens the manger to the original entry of the cave, right? So he talks a lot about how, the advent, or the first prehistory of man is this cave, and then it restarts with the cave of, Christ and Mary, right? So, and being around these animals, really artful comparisons by Chesterton. So it definitely tipped my hat to him.
He really combines, like when he paints a picture, he's almost sketching and drawing and pulling from all this different knowledge and information in history. But then there's an aspect of him where he's just almost in a bliss state of almost a prophetic mystic. Just,
it's fascinating.
I don't know how but I really believe that you read him, it's not just an old dusty book. You feel the joy in his words.
I totally agree. But also the great kind of insight that he has, that is really unique. And a lot of, I didn't expect, that's the kind of wonderful thing about Chesterton, is how clever and imaginative he is, very much so. Like, not in other writers. Kind of, you come into an apologetic book, of which this is one. Oftentimes you're just seeing, kind of dry recitations and references to the New Testament or something like that, of which he does reference, but in context. And Chesterton is a lot different, in my opinion, in the way he talks about it. And I think you're right. I mean, it's the same thing with Orthodoxy. Orthodoxy ends, the last book ended with about mirth and joy. And I think that's kind of his view of the advent of Christ, is that's what it's for. Although, even though he takes different things about Christ that I think are unique, is that one of the paradoxical aspects of Christ is that he's headed on a heroic journey, but the heroic journey is to death. That's like his, everything is pinned up to that. And I think he makes that point. I found that to be interesting. Yeah.
Well, later on, if I can just read a few lines here, that something goes, but that this says that the Christian. Well, let me not guess what he said. Okay, it has endured for nearly 2,000 years, and the world within it has been more lucid, more level-headed, more reasonable in its hopes, more healthy in its instincts, more humorous and cheerful in the face of fate and death than all the world outside. For it was the soul of Christendom that came forth from the incredible Christ, and the soul of it was common sense. Though we dared not look on his face, we could look on his fruits, and by his fruits we should know him. The fruits are solid, and the fruitfulness is much more than a metaphor. Nowhere in this sad world are boys happier in apple trees, or men in more equal chorus singing as they tread the vine, than under the fixed flash of this instant and intolerant enlightenment, the lightning made eternal as the light. And that's the end of the book.
That's the end of the book, I remember that.
But it's just considering all the darkness of the world, the pagans, and the journey of the cross that Jesus went through, and bringing through this resurrection power, and just from a purely practical, commonsensical mindset, looking at the world and how civilized although there are snakes in the garden, and he was definitely pointing out the advent of the Nazis.
I think that's a very important point you're making.
That's why he's been shadow banned. You don't find him anywhere except for little Catholic bookstores. And what Catholic's going to go and read and understand Chesterton?
Well, I want to ask you about two things. You bring up really two great points. Way I can break them up. One is the surprising amount of addressing the demonic paganism and counterbalancing Carthage with Rome, but also is the fact that, and we can address those in different points, but is the fact that Chesterton is his view of the church as Catholic. Does that negate his writing? Because I talked to some Christians who, the moment you bring up Catholic, if you're a Protestant, the whole thing is throw away, chuck it in the garbage. So
Well,
we can
now it's a
address that
different
whatever
Catholic
one you
church.
want.
Don't you think it was a little bit different in his day, about 100 years ago? It's like, this was not a Jesuit pope, agreeing with Hitlerian ideas of, United Nations takeover. And I mean, that
Absolutely.
in that time, because Chesterton maybe wasn't going to all the churches and, and he was really experiencing everything through literature, and then he was kind of a worldly guy. I mean, every picture with him, he's smoking a cigarette, and, he talks about drinking alcohol and, hanging out with people in London and media and news, and he was writing articles. He wasn't, honestly, I don't think that it really changes anything about him to me, that he was looking at it, because he's looking at the church from its very inception, and he acknowledges bad popes and horrible things that happen, and the deaths of the church and the resurrections of it. And I know he doesn't like Martin Luther very much. Did you get to that part? It's like,
no, I must have missed that. But I didn't feel like he was overtly Catholic. I mean, I've seen like super strident Catholic types, and I think that he was a little bit more vague. Like, I think that he might even, I did very little mention of Protestantism.
He doesn't talk about the Pope or like being, there's many different kinds of Catholics too. And I don't think he was the kind of Catholic that was using, to try to get people to join Catholicism. He mostly just talked about the Christian faith. Right. So in that sense, he's a very universal, and even anyone can approach him, even non-Christians, because it's so, the things that he says are just common sense and they're just true. And that's why they hate him so much.
Well, I think you're making a great point there, because I think he uses the church in a universal conception.
Yes. I would almost be a Catholic in some ways. That I can't stand just some of these Protestant churches where you go and like, they have no concept of the past, of what's happening in the world. And it's a lot of emotionalism without wisdom. And to me, Chesterton is the original info warrior. He's a mystic. He's got a great foundation of faith. Doctrinally checks out. In many cases, you could almost just reboot Christianity using a lot of things that Chesterton said, and kind of even heal some of those breaches between the Catholics and the Protestants. If you think about it, like that was the main beef he had, is he's like, Martin Luther, those German eyes looking at the blaze of all those books in the cold night of the German forest. You're just like, I didn't know Martin Luther was so scary.
Yeah, really. Now, Martin Luther at first wanted to reform the church. He just didn't think he could be reformed, right? I think that was my understanding.
And the mistakes have been made. Look at the kings of Israel. Like, God uses the choices that we make. We want a king. Okay, fine. You're going to have a king. And then Jesus is born of the seed line of David. Most of the kings were a mess, but it's like now we're in this situation with Catholicism and Protestantism and millions of denominations, and most of them are dead churches now. The Catholic Church is pretty much dead too. That's what the Catholic Church is. Spiritually, there's some people that are alive, but I would say that the fringe Christians, the things that you've been doing with Johnny and all these shows on the fringe circles, that's kind of going to be a revival once the Catholics get their hands on some of these old books and all this hidden knowledge and lore and stuff. I think we're pretty far past the Catholic Church and the Protestant.
Well, I think you could make an argument that the new kind of internet church or conversation could be put in the whole strain of a Great Awakening. I think that you could make that argument, because people aren't constrained by politics. They just say what they feel. So it's more of an ecstatic view of that than just something of a rote book where you're just reading off Sunday the 3rd, this is our text and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Oh, it's so, we're so far beyond doing that. There's certain things that I think we should do, like have communion and have worship, and we're working towards that. But at least for me, I found Chesterton in a Jesuit university in Tokyo, and I was raised really, heavy duty faith in the God and the Bible, and Protestant, but my grandfather's works with Derek Prince and all that. It was like a very good, hardy Protestant foundation, but there was a sickness that I could feel and a blindness to what's going on in the world. And in Tokyo, I was just separated from all those people. I didn't have any of my old friends. I didn't have shepherds or guardians like saying, "Oh, Michael, what are you talking about?" "Oh, no, that's not," I had some friends, but it was like the fellowship wasn't there. And then I started to learn about the world through the Jesuit school system there. I mean, they're brilliant, but there's some real devils. And some of the classes were totally liberal and just so empty. And the Japanese literature professor, I remember she would give us these horrible, horrible works of like worshiping suicide. And I was just, and I was only 20. I was like, I don't know what to do about this. And then I found the Everlasting Man, and Peter Millward, who had C.S. Lewis's letter addressed to him on his desk, the G.K. Chesterton Award of 2003 on his desk,
Wow.
and told me stories about going to Tolkien's classes.
Wow.
And I was just like, I want to study with you. I was going to stay. I was going to try to apply for the program. I did. And the very next day I met the family, the Children of God, and I worked with them for 10 years instead. You've interviewed me about that, but it was just like, I keep coming back to Chesterton though, as he was like the light of just pure Holy Spirit bath of, oh, this is what the world is. I don't have to read all this garbage that these Jesuit professors are giving me. Like, this is it. And throughout the years, it's been a lighthouse and kind of a sanctuary, coming back to like, I mean, there's everything in it. I don't want to go ramble too much here, but
but I think you're right. I mean, it's like he's got theology, classics, comparative religion. It shows the breadth of his understanding, is like his knowledge of just Carthage, classicism. But like, just to riff, if I had to sit through some classes that I had to sit through when I was 20, that I had to sit through, if I was today, I'd just walk out. Like, but when you're 20, you just sit there and take it, man. Whatever these people's crazy ideas. I mean, some of these professors got away with freaking, just horrible teaching. But when you're young, you don't have any context. You just go, okay, this is what I'm supposed to learn.
Yeah,
let's do it.
Yep. But I grew up in universities too. My dad's a professor of violin, thank God. But you can still feel the emptiness. And they really do get away with murdering the innocents.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say that, but that's the word that came to mind. They get away with murder. They do get away with murder. They really do. And a lot of people, they'll kill the instinct for learning, by just rote stuff. And if it's super politicized too, it's just, holy smokes. The professors are terrified of what to say. Did you learn violin? So I take it you know violin?
I did when I was a kid. I kind of got into the piano for a few years. I played with I got to study with a very famous pianist named Ivan Davis. You can look up Ivan Davis, but I wasn't that good. It was kind of like my entry into University of Miami. And then I was out of there. I wanted to go to Japan and, be a Jedi like my father.
University of Miami in Miami, right? Or was that University of Miami, Ohio?
In Miami, Florida. Yeah. My dad taught violin there. Associate professor of violin, and then he's the concert master of the Naples Philharmonic. So that was kind of my upbringing of homeschool plus classical music. Mom's a flutist, my dad is violinist, and that's kind of a buffer from the world. It wasn't. So then being dropped from that into the school system, I went to public school I went to Naples High School, public school, and it was just like evil. It was like
you went from like homeschooling, reading the Gospels, to public school, which evolution and probably tons of drugs. Crazy.
Oh yeah, it was like gangs city. Like, and I would walk around with this exact kind of shirt, just oh, I'm just a good boy, walking around with and the cop would come up to me and be like, "Who are you? I've never seen you." And he thought I was a drug dealer just because I didn't fit in. I had so many bullies, it was miserable.
It's rough.
But but then when you find something like this, it's like like the
Right. It's a
lightsaber,
refuge. Yeah, absolutely.
you know?
I want to go back to my original two-part question. What did you think? Like, I was surprised about how much demonology and human sacrifice that he actually referenced in this book. Do
Mm-hmm.
you remember those parts?
That was my first introduction to the idea of witches killing children and just this ancient hatred of innocence in children. I had never been exposed to that or heard of that. And when I heard those words, I didn't discover anything about the occult or, I've known not to touch that until years later. But that was like, whoa, that makes so much sense. Like that's.
But
Yeah.
I mean, for me, it was like that classical knowledge of him. But like talking about Carthage, is he actually doesn't think that civilization is really that. I mean, there's a lot of discontents with civilization. That civilization doesn't mean that you actually engage in the best of all possible behaviors, because he references Carthage, some of these other states, that Carthage was basically based on child sacrifice, And that's a kind of a famous phrase in Latin that the Romans used during the Punic Wars was delenda est Carthago in Latin, but he kind of extrapolates that into the symbolism of what this new religion of Christianity is supposed to destroy, is this old kind of Moloch loving. I had no idea that Hannibal means grace of Baal. Like, so I learned a lot of stuff just by reading Chesterton and the Baalim, the old gods of ancient Israel. So there's little aspects there that you learn a lot, at least for me.
If you look at the occult too, they've basically been channeling those old gods and trying to bring back human sacrifice. I mean, I think that's where this abortion stuff is going too, is that they're not just trying to make it so that you can have an abortion or, pedophilia is not so bad. They're trying to get it back to the old system and this would be some of the more out there shows that you listen on YouTube and on the Fringe and things, but as Stan Deo would say, they're trying to open the gateways back to those old gods.
Right. Yeah.
And really in Rome and in Greece, like they weren't, I'm sure there were cults that were, but it was a system that the iron system of Rome was really what made it possible for Christianity to extend around the world. And we're kind of in almost a Roman system.
I think Chesterton makes that point. Yeah, absolutely.
Did you read the part where he's like, it seemed like Jesus had a real liking towards Roman soldiers? Like,
he did. He said he preferred the Romans to the Jews. Flat out wrote that, which in a lot of ways, if you look at it, it seems like he did. The Romans actually had preference for him, because if you look at Pontius Pilate's dealing with Christ, he's trying to save him. I don't see any fault in this man. Isn't there like something tradition where you put another man and allow him to be saved, or so, and then Pilate washes his hands, but the Jewish mob, doesn't want that. So yeah, it's an interesting point.
There's even a letter from Pontius Pilate to Caesar, which says that he didn't find anything in Jesus to be in any way against the Roman Empire. It was very, and if you look at the American military and any good soldier anywhere, I used to teach Taiwanese military English for little summer camps and stuff. And now I'm in Hawaii and I'm surrounded by every branch of the military. And I'm sure some different agencies too that wouldn't disclose. But these are some of the best people that I'm sure there's rowdy soldiers in bars and everything. But you're like, when you're talking to a disciplined, trained soldier, you're just, these are some of the most fun people to be around, to work with, to talk with. And even online, a lot of our partners, they're from the 101st Airborne, U.S. Army, former, signals intelligence officers that we regularly fellowship. I mean, these are like my church now too. And it's like, cool. What is it with soldiers? And then I remember that quote from Everlasting Man. It's like, yeah, Jesus really seemed to get along with. So when we're talking about America, the whore of Babylon, and U.S. military, evil, illegal wars, but the soul of, it's almost like that kind of system from Rome has been transplanted here now in a way. Like you've seen those soldiers. I don't know if I could really say, I'm kind of
Well, you could probably extrapolate that to the rise of Christendom through the U.S., which, the two parts were commercial involvement and Christendom, right? You could probably say that in some ways, D.C. and the U.S. is a kind of functioning as a new Rome, right? Because if the original founders of the Christian church were not associated with Rome, like Paul is traveling to Rome, right, on all of their transport. And that's the seeds of going from Ephesus to Thessalonica, right? And writing to each one of those little seeds within the Roman Empire that, grew out to that.
And Pontius Pilate, that was the quote I forgot. He said, apparently Jesus even said, "Give to Caesar what is Caesar's." He quoted Jesus in the letter, saying,
"Was that letter in? Where was that letter found? Is that in
famous letter? There's a little bit of controversy about it. It describes him as having kind of golden hair as well, like not like the dark-skinned Aramaic kind of look, I guess, that everybody, so there's some speculation as to whether it's totally trustable. But if you look it up on the internet anywhere, you're going to find a famous letter from Pontius Pilate regarding Christ. It's a few pages long.
I'm trying to find that quote where he preferred the Romans to the Jews, because I added that highlight and I'm trying to find it.
Okay, while you're doing that, I will read another little ending of a chapter. This is, again, How to Read Chesterton. This is the last chapter before the other. That was the conclusion that I had read before, but
okay.
He talks about the whole medieval order, in many ways so complete and almost cosmic a home for man, wore out gradually in its turn. And here at least it was thought that the words would die. They went forth across the radiant abyss of the Renaissance, and in 50 years were using all its light and learning for new religious foundations, new apologetics, new saints. It was supposed to have been withered up at the last in the dry light of the age of reason. It was supposed to have disappeared ultimately in the earthquake of the age of revolution. Science explained it away, and it was still there. History disinterred it in the past, and it appeared suddenly in the future. Today it stands once more in our path, and even as we watch, it grows. He's talking about the church. And just that this Christianity just doesn't seem to go away no matter what you do. It's a futuristic religion. That's the coolest thing. And it's not really, it doesn't fit in the box of like Buddha, Mohammed, Krishna, Jesus. Right. It's like totally kills that. But then when he starts to focus his intellect on what is Christendom, suddenly it's like, like time, space portals ripping, dimensions opening, and man, if only he were here today. But a lot of what we're doing is thanks to a lot of his work.
Well, we're keeping him alive, right? That's the importance of books. That's the importance of like this. You can see through time. Here's the quote that he says. This is from chapter 2 of the second part of the book. Chapter 2 is Riddles of the Gospel. In my version, it's page 26. He says, "There is nothing that throws any particular light on Christ's attitude towards organized warfare, except he seems to have been rather fond of Roman soldiers. Indeed, it is another perplexity, speaking from the same external and human standpoint, that he seems to have got on much better with Romans than he did with Jews." But the question here is a certain tone to be appreciated by merely reading a certain text. We might give any number of instances of it. So this is kind of a funny observation, which in part is true, I think. I think it's true.
Well, where are we today? And I don't know if you want to jump into, I don't know what your time is or how much you want to.
Whatever you want.
I'm okay.
I've got time. I've got at least 20 minutes.
On my motorcycle. Oh, you got at least 20 minutes. Okay. That's
but
like,
not
very much time.
No, I want to, but there was like, we're still at it today because I just posted something about, now I can't even remember his name, where he's Jewish. He still thinks that Christ was a revolutionary against Rome and got hung for it. So it's a total, Ben Shapiro, like some guy with like 3 million YouTube followers and all these Christians listen to him. And he doesn't even have spiritual worldview that's consistent with their beliefs. It's amazing.
That's just historically not true.
I know, but this guy, you know that Shapiro, he is very well educated. He has like a Harvard law degree. I don't know where he did his undergrad studies, but it's the most, it's blazing ignorance actually out of his mouth, because there's a full, there's all kinds of writing from Josephus and all these things that talk about Christ in a completely different instance. But if you're only reading the Talmud, then that's probably what view is. Yeah. Right? He's probably only reading rabbinical Talmudism is my guess.
Probably. Yeah. But there's just so much ignorance out there, and it's important. I mean, if you're in a sense, what we're doing is sharing intelligence. We're listening and sharing, and you're interviewing and writing books, and we're networking with so many different people. And if you go back to the roots and get a good foundation from a writer like Chesterton, it'll enable us to more just to kind of, when you have someone that's just shooting their mouth off and doesn't have any clue, you can be like, all due respect, Mr. President, it wasn't like that. It was like this.
Maybe we should get the everlasting man. Now let's read chapter 3. Let's go. Second half. I mean, there's an act of apologetics.
You got chapter 3 open there?
I do. Well, I just had chapter 2. What am I at? Let's see.
I've been skipping to the very end of the second book. Okay, so yeah, you haven't actually
strangest story in the world, chapter 3. I'm just using that as a general reference, just as a hypothetical. That's all.
Okay. I'm going to open my Kindle is like struggling just to open.
But, another interesting thing that this whole concept of this kind of demonic thing that he emphasizes, that Herod the Idumean, right, who killed the children in Nazareth, is part of this whole Carthaginian stream, which is another interesting point from Chesterton. It's something that I never really thought about, which is kind of like a child sacrifice, right?
Wow.
Down to Christ. Here's my cat.
Ramsey's cat.
Yeah.
This is epic, historical.
Oh. She knows that when I'm sitting down, she can come bother me. Anyway.
I have a gecko running around in here somewhere, but I don't think it's as cuddly.
But if you want to move out of Chesterton, I'm more than willing. We can go and talk whatever you want. If you want to talk about current events.
I never move out of Chesterton. It's like everything that we're dealing with. I mean, what we're dealing with, what's happening in the White House today, and what's happening with the different agencies waking up and realizing, like, oh my gosh, like there are literally pedophiles in high places, and this demonic, just this Illuminati, whatever it is, that wants to try to shut down the American government and turn it into a hellhole.
Right.
And that there are actual patriots in, and why I was kind of leading towards the military and the agencies is, and I'm meeting people that, they've worked with the FBI, and I don't know if I've met CIA yet here, but it seems like this whole island is crawling with just every single type of government person. And you stop looking at them as spooks and thinking like, oh, you guys are you're the enemy. No, like there's tons of people that we need to reach out to, and they need to understand that what our enemy is today is an ancient enemy. Right. And that writers like Chesterton really hammered it into the mainstream in their generation. But then there was a little distraction called World War II that people kind of maybe lost their everlasting man books, in the fires or something. But there's and then I'm using complete total vernacular when I go on live, and I'm just blabbering. And
but you're making perfect sense, dude. That makes perfect sense. You're in it right again. You're right back with the Moloch, right back with the Carthaginian.
It's happening.
It's right there. It's the same religion, right?
Office, everybody's looking at their Twitters. Trump is looking at Twitter all the day. It's like, where do you go back to that quiet place where you really, somebody unfurls the ancient scroll and it says, Mr. President, I think you should see this. The ancient Carthaginians, and that's where we are. We have that with our platforms, which is why I would recommend anybody listening to also consider starting a podcast. Consider reading some of these essays of Chesterton. We need more of these out there. I think there's a lot of people out there that want on YouTube, but they just try to read through the whole book, and you're just like, I don't know.
I think you got to contextualize it. Yeah.
We
But
have
I
to
mean,
be able to
look at this.
digest it down.
Look at this whole weird thing that's on Jeffrey Epstein's island with the owl motifs and
Yes.
the gold and blue and tunnels and
There's an owl?
yeah, there's like there were two owls. I guess he's trying to take it apart or something's going on because somebody actually they took a drone and went over and the owls are gone. But these guys are into some heavy duty occult stuff, man. It's not good. So but he's never getting out of jail. He probably will never get out of jail because too many people are coming.
Good.
So Raniere went down too, and there was things involving Keith Raniere of NXIVM that were very dark. He actually called himself Lucifer. That's what he would tell his followers. So he was right in line with Hubbard and some of these other people who really not only identify, they become one with the devil in that regard.
Well, that's the dead body under the floorboards of the living room that we've been all playing Nintendo and watching cable TV, and all along there's been that smell, but it's like, just smoke some cigarettes and you won't smell that. And then somebody comes in and like, what are you guys doing? Like, there's literally a dead body here somewhere. And that's the revolution right now that I think finally, and we might be culminating to that beast system finally in this generation. There is going to be a showdown. I just don't think we knew how many good guys there were going to be in high places. That's really exciting to me because I've lived in communist China and done underground mission work. I've seen the fear and the emptiness, and this country has something that all other countries, you have people in every country that we go to that love rock and roll and Hollywood movies, and they just think America is like this great place. They're not all anti-American. You go out there and that's where, like, this generation, as we're exposing the pedophilia and it's finally coming true. You've probably done shows about Epstein. I wouldn't be surprised if you've talked about it.
I did 3 shows. Yeah. I didn't really, I was kind of late to the game. Opperman started, I think, in 2015 or 2016.
Okay.
But, that was all very covered. The mainstream media only really started covering Epstein in the last week. So,
man,
it's embarrassing. He's involved. Hey, man, he's involved in some heavy duty stuff. One of the filings in one of the cases, it was the case that Giuffre, one of the victims, is suing Dershowitz for defamation. There was a map that showed where Epstein was going and traveling around. And one of his stops is in Tangier in Morocco. And the first thing that came to my mind is that's the same kind of place that Crowley and L. Ron Hubbard went to go solicit little boys. So is Jeffrey Epstein involved in that stuff too? Because that would get it much darker than what's publicly. And I think there's all kinds of dark stuff involved. And some of his friends and some of those people have been to those islands. If you look at the post on Crazy Days and Nights, it gets brutal, really brutal.
And it's also very, you could say, the deep state secret space program and weird rituals off planet type weird stuff, which could be drug induced hallucinations. But we can look at Dan Duvall on the Fringe Radio Network's also interviewed quite a few of these survivors, and they believe that they've been in these underground crazy sacrificial rituals that get into some extremely it's just like hell is unleashed. There's things out there that I don't know if your audience would be really ready to just jump into that kind of wormhole of crazy. But
do you think these people are summoning? Do you think they're summoning demons?
Oh, they absolutely are summoning demons. I mean, look at the main kind of line of, like, even the millennials that are just, they're twisted into this like libtard kind of like, I hate men and I think babies are terrible and I hate God, and they just like scream with our autistic shrieks of just anything that offends them. They get triggered and they're just like that's a demonic.
Well, don't you think that's all just part of the conditioning?
Well, social engineering. All of this, there actually is, as Russ Dizdar, you've been with on TV, he has talked a lot about the Satanic Black Awakening, and that there are these underground armies of millions of satanic super soldiers. And I've personally met people that could have been, or at least they believe that they were a part of that. And it deals with some very, very high-tech stuff that the public has not been made aware of yet. And it just gets really sci-fi at this point. So I don't know if we want to get too into detail.
I don't mind, but I mean, I think, don't you think that some of these like mind control guys who go crazy have been subjected to MK Ultra type programs? Like they may walk into a shrink's office and say, "Hey, I'm depressed," and 4 months later, they're basically zapped. They're on some kind of weird drug that, take this pill. This is just an antidepressant, John. And it's probably like, I would never take a pill from a psychiatrist, but, okay. I know I grew up around a lot of these shrinks and stuff when I was in Palo Alto, and I don't trust any of them. You don't know what's any of those pills too these days. Holy smokes, the pharmaceutical industry, that's pharmakia. Yeah. I mean, a lot of their stuff is just complete. A lot of their science is it's just complete fiction. They just make facts up. I mean, it's off the charts.
Add to that, the idea of underground, and then adding to that, there's underground dungeons of not just underage girls with politicians, which I'm sure they do that just to kind of, what's the word? Compromise. Blackmail. That's where they think he got all of his money from. He's like, he has some kind of scheme going on here because nobody knows where he got his money.
Well, he's getting back. He has backing of very wealthy people. That's what I think is happening, because nobody ever saw him on Wall Street. Nobody's ever known anybody who's investing. So his whole story is a legend. It's legendary, and intelligence legend is really the proper term. So there's something really deep going on with Epstein. Somebody's financing him.
It's probably just that tunnel. That might be a symbol, that little temple thing with the elevator. That could be.
Well, some of his friends are very dark, and I mean, I wouldn't even say this online, but I know a lot of stuff of people he's hanging out with that are, Illuminism, flat out Illuminism.
Yeah.
So smart, intelligent kind of Illuminism, symbolism, all that stuff that they know. So there, it's not a joke.
Well, we don't want to get anybody in trouble, but it's definitely a big picture view of this, a G.K. Chesterton bird's eye view of all of this information, which seem to indicate that the stuff that you, Russ Dizdar, a lot of Dan Duvall, people that are dealing with SRA survivors, their testimonies, it says in the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses. I mean, we've got hundreds of witnesses of people who say they've been raised in satanic families. They witnessed. My babysitter was one of them growing up. They
don't talk about it either, too. They're embarrassed or ashamed to talk about it.
It takes them years, and a lot of them, it seems like they have this kind of brainwashing, like memory wiping thing, where a lot of these kids go through this ritual abuse, but then they're either threatened to never tell anyone. Like the last one was so horrible. It was like they took a bunch of kids to some barn. They found a woman on the side of the street that was hitchhiking. They brought her there and they impaled her on a pitchfork in front of the kids. And they told the kids, if you ever tell anyone anything that we're doing, you will be killed like this woman. And half the time they would do stunts that make them believe it was real, but then they would find out it was fake. But in this particular situation, the victim, the lady that was grown up by then, but when she was a child, she believed that it was a real murder, that they were actually committing murder in front of kids and killing kids too in front of and having them kill each other and do just twisted, horrible things that only Satan himself would do, because he knows God loves kids. God loves children. And, any sane human would do everything that they could to protect their children. If you read some of those stories in the Franklin cover-up by Camp, he talks a story about, what's his name? Hunter S. Thompson. Like, they just had kids and they just killed them, Like Thompson was in public on David Letterman saying, "I like to kill." So a lot of stuff kind of overlaps each other, and that guy was out of his mind, Well, in the Bible, it talks about a king killing his own son to stop Israel's armies, and it works. Apparently, there's power in that. So that's kind of the situation that we're seeing now. And I mean, Epstein, he's probably the top of the iceberg.
Well, no, that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up in the Old Testament, because there's like a Baalic, ark or whatever they put in New York recently, right? Didn't they put like some kind of temple of Baal in there?
Yes.
And in the old Israel, all the people that are, they go, oh man, the Israeli things were all against these, all people against them. They're so violent. Well, all of the cultures that were surrounding them were like Carthage. They were into child sacrifice and temple prostitutes and all kinds of weird sex magic that we call it sex magic today, probably. You know, you go in and do awful things. So the past is present. The past isn't that far past, really. A lot of ways.
Yeah, and the good news is that, I mean, the Bible is a document that is alive, that is telling us prophecies that came true in the past, and there's prophecies that haven't come true yet. And the good news is that Battle of Armageddon, Christ is coming back, boom, major, major battle. And that's what these people are being trained to fight against. That's the crazy thing. It's not just like, we're going to take over the world. They're all getting ready because they believe some kind of an invading force is going to come and take the planet back. And you read the book of Revelation, and it's the book is opened and the seals are removed, and it's literally like we're studying real estate, and one of the fun things is like, a lot of these terms are really biblical terms about trusts and deeds and the ownership and the legal terms. And the Bible is a legal document or a collection of documents that is the process of the planet's ownership going from Lucifer back to God through Jesus Christ, the Son of God. And that earthquake time that we're in right now, we're going to see some crazy stuff.
It's getting faster and faster. Like, I would never believe where we were today with like the common culture from when I was a kid. Like, this is unbelievable. It's unbelievable, man. So, anyway, I got to wrap it up, dude. Is there any final words or anything you'd like to add? Where can people listen to your show, and what kind of recent interviews have you done?
Well, we're doing a lot of networking with the Kingdom Talks people. So if you want to get updated on that, that's Derek Grosskirth, the Truth Seeker, quote unquote, Gil Hodges, Berlin Newbie. There's just a host of people. So I've started a new website to just keep on top of what I'm doing personally, my readings of Chesterton and some of our past interviews on thespiritforce.com.
Thespiritforce.com.
Only my content, and there's a newsletter on the top of that. You can click that. I'm about to send out the first one.
Cool.
So,
I'm gonna go do it.
There's
right now.
A lot more to do. There's a lot more to do.
There's a lot of work.
Thespiritforce.com, which is the tip of the hat to Trump's Space Force thing. And thinking, with all these militaries and agencies and good people that are going to come into contact with this stuff.
I'm putting my email in right now.
We want to give people an arsenal of faith, of fellowship, of maturity, and also we're exploring the regions out there. We're going into some things that even Skywatch is like, I don't know about these Christian mystics, and I'll be the first to say I don't know about them too much either. But we need to. We're going to be doing a lot of teachings, trainings, interviews with some pretty high-level people. Mostly Gil has been conducting them. I've been a little bit busy this last few weeks. But just to teach people how to pray and how to kind of abide under the shadow of the Almighty, to abide in the secret place, so that when you're getting inundated with information all day, you won't be overwhelmed. Because we're just getting started. This is a marathon. It's not one battle. And there's an army that is already in existence, but we haven't all kind of found each other yet. So that's sort of what's happening right now, is that, over the years, these interviews you've done with people and Johnny's built on the Fringe Radio Network had Alex Jones on it about 10 years ago. One of the shows
it's huge now. The Fringe Radio Network is just massive. So people need to go check that out too.
If the site itself needs to be promoted more, but the individual shows, you're getting a lot of, your audience is very considerable. And when you put together all those numbers, it's not just, the Fringe Radio Network itself, its website. It's your podcast, your YouTube channel. It's my stuff everywhere. It's Derek's stuff. It's, Daniel Ott, Edge Radio AM. We have 100 shows on there. And if you were to tally up all those numbers, I would put Alex Jones on there if I could. I think we actually probably could, although we might get banned. But I consider the numbers thing all of our numbers together. You know, I'm not really making hardly any money doing this except for Patreon. Thank you, people on Patreon. It pays for this office. But God has an army. God has a government. And when you kind of raise your hand, it's like you're joining the army. You know, you're going to a local recruiting station, and an angel comes and watch your life go crazy. I mean, you can hear my story. William Ramsey interviewed me a while back, and Julian Charles interviewed me, but the interview was a little bit too hot, and he had to take it down because somebody
Really?
threatening him. Yes.
Really? What was the issue?
Well, he got a little too deep into the Children of God stuff, and then some angry missionaries started threatening him.
Sorry to hear that.
But it was a good interview. I mean, my life's been mayhem nonstop, but God's protected me, and we're having a baby in a couple months, getting our real estate license.
Congratulations.
I would like to learn more about the law, to be honest. I want to
just do a show. You know what I'll do? I'll do an open show, Q&A. Anybody who has any legal questions can ask me, because I get asked that all the time.
Totally do that.
I'm not allowed to give legal advice, but I am allowed to talk about the law. So
are you practicing right now, or?
I'm an inactive member of the California State Bar. But if I was practicing, I probably could, in certain contexts, provide. I mean, I could. Yeah, there's issues with jurisdictions and stuff like that.
Okay.
But I can talk about the law in general. Yeah, if anybody has any, I mean, I can give advice. I can also tell you where to go. You know?
Not just in California, right?
Right, I can. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can tell you what to research or what I would do, but I cannot tell you anybody in affirmative take in any particular affirmative action. No.
How does one pass the bar exam, William Ramsey?
That's a tough one. Well, it's a lot easier in California now. My understanding is that it's only 2 days instead of 3, but it requires a lot of study. There are classes that you take. You take a barbery class, which is very important. But the best way to actually not freak out, it used to be only a 50% passage rate, but you have to study, and you want to distill all of those different elements of the law into very digestible small parts, which means that you have to take constitutional law, property law, contracts, torts, criminal procedure, criminal law. I'm missing something else, but you have to take all of those that are very vast black letter law and distill them down into a component that you can understand, and then go take the bar for 3 days, not freak out, don't hang out with anybody else, literally go into kind of a monastic phase. And I promise, if you are able to go through 3 years of law school, you probably will pass. I think a lot of people miss out because their test-taking skills aren't that good. They should be good by the time you take the bar, but you also don't want to start talking with other people. The worst thing you can do is group study is like the worst. So I think that's what really gets people in trouble. It's like, oh, you're all staying at that hotel? Oh, okay, I'll stay at that hotel. I didn't do that. I actually, I stayed by myself. Studied by myself, took deep breaths. My test-taking skill was actually to get up every half an hour and just look over my thing for 2 or 3 minutes and then sit back down, which was very strange because everybody else was freaking out. But it actually gave me kind of a mental objectivity that I just went back through, okay, this is what I want to think, this is what I write. So I didn't just barf out things. The test is broken up into, the 3-day test was 200 multiple guess questions on one day, and then essay writing for the other 2 days. So you really wanted to kind of look at all these facts, put them all together, and then write these essays. But you really wanted to think about what you wanted to write before you wrote them. So there are different techniques that you can do to pass the bar in any state, really, I think.
Well, how does one go? And that's great. I hope people will consider, especially your audience, if we have lawyers that are followers of William Ramsey Investigates, that would be so cool. We need lawyers, we need good people, ethical lawyers. How do you go from that? And I know that you have to go, but maybe there's a show you can point us to, but where's the story of William Ramsey going from being an attorney to what you do? That is, very.
There is a story. Actually, I think I posted it on, was my DC days. Okay. And that's on my YouTube. You can listen to all like the time that I worked for a guy who was involved in the Vince Foster murder, which they call a suicide, which is fake. And that's kind of changed that was really not really like I got woke, but I was like, you can manipulate the entire media and tell them the story and have talking points through the party, whether it's the Democratic Party or the Republican Party. And so I think it's DC Days. I did an interview with a guy. He was really one of the first early podcasters. His name was Visigoth. I know his real name, but he did some really good shows, and I was on his show. He was one of the early people who promoted me when I wrote Prophet of Evil 9 years ago or 10 years ago. Him and actually Derek Gilbert. Derek Gilbert and I go way back. He was actually one of the few people who let me do an interview with a book that I literally printed out from a printer. You know, it was 8x10. It was terrible. So kudos to Derek for that. But yeah, so I tell my story in kind of detail in DC. You know, I didn't grow up in an occult family, so I didn't really know anything about Masonry or secret society. So I was naive. But
so we can find your DC Days on your YouTube channel, Visigoth, and
it was actually an interview I did with Visigoth. That's correct.
Because your research is incredible, your writing, and we also, I mean, your life is so interesting. I want to just find that and listen to that when I go to the
it's
gym
been
later.
an interesting journey.
That's where I
actually
myself
talk about
I want, but
I talk about all the FBI agents I've had yeah, so I mean, oh my God. Let me see if I can find this. I'm going through my old stuff. Okay, so I did a show with Larry on Crowley and Hitler, Children of the Beast. It's the show is on my YouTube. It's titled William Ramsey on Visigoth Raw Live, Our Occult Political Misleader, September 10th, 2011. I think that's either that one. I think that's the one that I did. I think that's the one that I was on. Unless it was another one. No, I'm pretty sure that was it. That's the one where I talk about it. Our occult political misleading.
Awesome.
Got to go back through the thing. All right, man, I got to run. Nice talking with you,
so
Mike.
It's an honor always. Thank you so much.
Likewise, man. Let's
if
stay
you have a
in
chance,
touch.
send me the link, and whenever when you post it, I'll grab it.
Because
you don't post the video, do you?
What's that? Say that again.
Sorry, yeah, you got a little bit choppy. Okay, the next book. Yeah, let's. One of the things that I've really wanted to look at in a show is that Carol S. Quigley, The Tragedy and Hope.
Oh, that would be definitely
the first few hundred pages, maybe.
Yeah,
not the whole thing.
I think I have that. I'll send you a copy of it.
Oh, on a PDF?
Yes.
Okay. Well, maybe our audience can stay tuned, and maybe we can discuss a little bit. I'm not an expert of his, but I think that's probably from the Chesterton sector to maybe the more worldly sector. Would Carol S. Quigley, Tragedy and Hope would be one of the most important kind of touchstones.
I think you're right.
And it'll make me go back and read it too, since I haven't actually finished it. Just the first few hundred pages really sum up again kind of all of world history, and it really gets into money, which is very important.
Very important.
So,
all right, Mike.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the show, man. Take care.
Thank you. All righty. Bless you.